All right, folks, this week we chat with Karine Diedrich from the Canadian Hospice and Palliative Care Association to do a deep dive on advanced care planning. What the hell is advanced care planning? Well, it's basically where you make decisions about your healthcare and your personal care in advance based on your values and your wishes. Karine walks us through the importance of communicating your wishes to loved ones, and healthcare providers to ensure that your care aligns with your preferences. So stay tuned because in the wrap up, I get to tell the fellas all about a man who became an amphibian for 100 days and has possibly unlocked the key to immortality or some shit. So without further ado, this is our conversation with our new friend, Karine. Today, fellas, we are joined by our new friend, Karine Diedrich, the director of Advanced Care Planning at Canadian Hospice Palliative Care Association, the CHPCA, which we're familiar with because they gave us an award.
We have an award.
But whatever, we're not here to talk about the award. She has joined the CHPCA after serving as Vice President, Public Engagement and Knowledge Mobilization at Volunteer Canada, following a long-standing role as National Priority Advisor at the Canadian Centre on Substance Use and Addiction. She has worked in the nonprofit sector for over 15 years, leveraging her skills in partnership development, strategic planning, and communications to tackle complex social challenges. And we are absolutely excited,
chuffed to bits
to be speaking with you today, Karine, because we're going to be talking about something that A, is extraordinarily important. B, is something that I feel like nobody really wants to think about because of probably some preconceived notions as to what people associate with this particular thing. And B, it's something that I have been thinking about a lot over the last few years, but I've been procrastinating and pushing it off. And I think this is the exact type of conversation that's going to light that fire under my ass to look into what it means to fill out an advanced care directive or advanced care planning. Karine, thank you so much for joining us today. And please, for a moment, just introduce yourself to the three of us and to all of our listeners.
Well, I'm excited that not a lot of people are excited about advanced care planning. So I'm very excited that you're excited about it. I'm thrilled to be here. I agree. I think it's absolutely something that a lot of people think about but don't do. I have, through my career and my life and my studies, looked at behavior change, right? There's a lot of things we know we should do. There's a lot of things we think is important to do, but we don't do it, right? So there's a lot we can learn, I think, from other people and other sectors and other spaces. So that's the perspective I often bring to the work that I do. It's never a one sector, a one perspective thing. We look at what are other people doing in smoking cessation? What are other people doing in life planning and financial planning and all of these different things? And we try to figure out how do we nudge people towards this. And in particular, I think when it comes to advanced care planning, people are just confused. They're overwhelmed and they don't know what it is. So I actually am really curious to know what you guys think it is.
I have a question that will answer that or hopefully get into that. So I fairly recently, did my will for the first time. And, I did that when my first daughter was born. And, that was kind of like the kick in the ass to do a will and get that in place.
I thought you were talking about our friend Will. I was like, holy shit, Taylor.
No.
This is news.
Yeah, right.
You did will?
No, a will.
Oh, okay.
And I am wondering what the difference is. What is the difference between advanced care planning and a will? Is advanced care planning something that is integrated into a will? Is it something that is separate from a will? I know that there were considerations about about end of life care in some capacity, but I'm curious, like when I hear advanced care planning and will, those two things seem to blend together in my mind, and I really don't know where the differences is. So when I think about advanced care planning, I synonymize that with will, but I'm guessing that's probably not fully accurate.
You mean to tell me that there's 2 documents you need to fill out?
God damn it. This is too much paperwork. But before you answer that, I just want to say, Karen asked us what we think advanced care planning is. You're cheating by trying to get her to tell you what it is before we have to fucking answer.
Well, no, I said that.
So
I said that I synonymize it. That's what I think.
Well, I want to know, Brian, what do you think advanced care planning has to do with before we find out the difference between will and advanced care planning?
So my understanding is that it's a document that you fill out that sort of puts in writing the things that you feel important for you when it gets to like end of life care and what happens to you afterwards.
Okay.
I don't think I'm right. I don't really think that I know that much about this, but like in my mind, that's what I think of. It's like an important document that sort of, when you're not able to tell people what you want, it gives that advanced information, information that was collected in advance to help you plan for that.
Okay. I think I could be wrong. Karen might jump in and go,
you very well could be wrong.
You butchered that. But I think you did have some things right. But I think what also is a part of advanced care planning is not just end of life, but it's also the plan that you are putting forward so that, let's say you get in a situation where you get in a car accident and, you know, the healthcare providers are like, all right, we have to try to save this person's life, but there are maybe some things you don't want them to try to do to resuscitate you, or you don't want them to do if you can't specifically say whether you want that care or not. So not just like end of life, but like any healthcare period where you are not able to say, I want this, I don't want that. You're putting it out there to say, I'm giving you the okay to do this to me and the not okay to do this.
Just to clarify, are you piggybacking on my answer?
No, I'm saying what you said was right.
Okay.
But you specified end of life care.
Right.
And I don't think it's just end of life care. I think it's just care in general where you may not have the ability to speak for yourself.
So you think I'm right plus what you think too.
Yeah.
All right, Karen, you're up.
Okay, so you're all a little bit right.
God damn it.
Part of the reason you're all a little bit right is because it's actually changed quite a bit. So as you said, I'm from the Canadian Hospice Palliative Care Association. That's often very much associated with end of life.
Yeah.
So originally, like 2008-ish, that's what advanced care planning was very focused on. And it was very focused on, resuscitate, do not resuscitate. Like, what medical treatments do I want or not want? And we've learned a lot since that time, that what I think I want now is not necessarily what I'm going to want when the time comes. Because, I don't know, like you said, we have children. That changes how we think about things. That might change, what we fight for, or what we're willing to bear, what's important to us, who we trust, all those things. So now, if I was to define, when we look at advanced care planning, it is part of life planning. So that's been one of the biggest shifts. Is it's not this end of life care only. It's this: we plan for our finances, we get our wills, we do estate planning. Let's think about health and personal care. So it's meant to be upstream in advance of anything going awry, because shit happens, right? So we have to think about it. And we've moved away from these medical directions to talking about your values and your wishes. And that gets really squishy for people really fast. They're like, what do you mean? And how is that going to help somebody make decisions? So ultimately, advanced care planning is thinking about what's important to you and sharing that information with others, so that if there comes a time where you can't make a decision for yourself, they're going to know what you want. Right. It's a way for you to get the care that aligns with your values and wishes, which ultimately is about you maintaining control over, decisions about your health and personal care, which is really critical to, I think a lot of people want that. They want that. There's a sense of dignity. There's a sense of control. There's a sense of trust. And it's really about, what do I want for my care? So if I say, Jeremy, I trust you, we're going to have a big conversation. I'm going to tell you about all these things that are important to me. And when the time comes, you're going to make the decisions on my behalf. Yeah. Not what do you think would be best in that situation?
Right.
What do you think I would want? So that's the real, that's really important for ACP, It's real. So I'm going to say, advanced care planning, ACP.
Sure.
It's ultimately, it's about person-centered care. So in healthcare, we say that a lot. In different spaces, you might hear that a lot, person-centered care. So ideally, the health that we receive should be all about what we want, how we get it, when we get it. Do we want it virtually or not? We saw a lot of that over the past few years. Now, do we want to keep it virtual? Some people want it, some people don't. So in its essence, ACP is a driver of person-centered care. And it really only kicks in when you're no longer in a position to speak for yourself.
Right.
So some people get nervous, right? They're just like, am I giving my power to somebody else to do this? No, you hold on to that. But if you're unconscious, if you have a heart attack, right? So it's not just chronic illness or end of life. It can be anything at any point. And so that's really at its essence what it is. Right. It's about thinking about what's important to you, having conversations with people and sharing that information. The document, the will, the legal stuff, it's part of it, but it is not the most important part.
Right.
But it is the part that people gravitate to right away.
Right.
So is advanced care planning, is that like an overarching term for like Jared and I sit down and I'm like, hey, Jared, listen, when I get to end of life, here are the things that are important to me, or not end of life, but like I'm thinking about these situations that might come up with my health in the future where I can't speak for myself. And I tell Jeremy that I want him to make these decisions for me on my behalf, thinking like he's me in that situation when I can't. Is that advanced care planning, or is advanced care planning like more of a formal process that you have to sit down and like officially do?
I would say it's the first one. But there is a legal component to it. And that's the part people hang on to. In its very essence, so going back to the original, you filled out your will. Did I just do an advanced care plan? Often people are prompted to do advanced care planning when they fill out their will. So it gets really messy across the country because we all decide to call things differently. We all have different names, different forms. So I'm based out of Ontario. In Ontario, when I got my will updated, I also did what's called a power of attorney for personal care. So that is the document that says this is legally the person who is going to make some decisions for me if I can't. In certain parts of the country, that's the same person for your legal or your financial. In other parts, it's separate. And if you don't have that document, there is a hierarchy. So the law will say it's these people. So that's the other element of ACP is it's actually a really important chance for you to kind of say, I want that person.
Yeah. So
if I've got a really big family, or my family lives outside of Canada, or I'm really close with my friends and I don't really talk to my family, right? We all have different relationships, or I'm a new Canadian, or I'm a single mother. There's so many examples where you might not have thought about that. And it's going to save so much pain and stress and anxiety for the people that care for you because they're going to have a sense of what you want. Yeah. And it's also going to help the healthcare providers, right? They're trying to give you what you want. But if you've never had that conversation with them or with your loved ones, then they don't know.
And that was the first thing that I thought about when you explained advanced care planning. The first thing that popped up in my mind was this also sounds like a form of, like, the word harm reduction came into my mind, but I was like, well, it's not harm reduction. It's like conflict reduction. Because I mean, I've heard so many times people in my personal life, people, you see it in film and movies, or you hear stories of others that you might not know, but like somebody is in a situation where they are, whether it's end of life or whether they've gone through some sort of health issue where they're like, where they can't speak or move, and the family gets involved, and this side of the family thinks, well, we got to do this, but then the wife is like, well, no, we got to do this. And
classic Grey's Anatomy plot.
The child, the adult child is like, well, no, I know, dad would want this, and then it causes like a rift and a divide and conflict within family to the point where it's not uncommon for that kind of conflict to literally lead to lifelong resentment and families fall apart, friendships fall apart based on people arguing on what they think is best when it has nothing to do with them. And the person who is unfortunately in a position where they are not in a place to communicate what their needs are or what their needs were, they're kind of forgotten about, and everybody's squabbling in the background, just causing more and more conflict.
And like the importance of like the formalization of it because of the way that like when you do nothing, the default mode is, I think, based on, my understanding is that that's based on sort of like an idealistic perfect world scenario based on, in a lot of cases, probably like outdated ideals. Like if if so-and-so is in this situation, then, and there's nothing that says anything otherwise, then specifically it's this person. And that's based on like, an idealistic world where like the relationship with this person that's the default is exactly what you would kind of hope in a fairy tale version of life is the case, that like this person is the parent or the partner or the kid is like, you have this, perfect relationship where they know exactly what you would want. And that's the default, when, the reality of life is that is very often not the case. And so laying that out in a formal way of who you trust to make those decisions is super important.
Which is hard because what I think we are all sort of hardwired to live by the golden rule. And this is something I love that you actually like wrote to us, which is advanced care planning is not the golden rule, i.e. do unto others as you would have done unto you, but rather, and I've never heard of this before, the platinum rule, doing unto patients as they would want done unto themselves. Is that a thing? The platinum rule? Is that like a thing in healthcare that I've never come across?
You know what? It's Dr. Harvey Chachnoff, and he is just an amazing human being in palliative care, and he published work on that concept, and he is all about dignity in care. And that was his introduction. He kind of said, you know what, this golden rule, we're it's not quite there. It's this platinum rule. It's looking at who the person is, how they make decisions, what are their cultural beliefs, what would they want, right? What I want is probably not going to be what my mom wants. We're different people. We have different beliefs. And, so it's really that shift to don't just do what you think's best. I mean, yes, as a medical professional, you're going to provide advice and guidance, and you have expertise that the family wants to hear about. But someone told me a story once of there was a patient, and she rode her bike everywhere. Like she rode to work, she did her groceries, like she might as well have been attached at the hip to her bike. Cycling was her life. And she had conversations with her physician for a whole bunch of different things. And, her family member was there. And casually it came up as they were looking at different, treatment options. And they're like, well, am I going to be able to ride my bike? And, for me, I don't care. I'll walk. Like the bike, that makes no difference to me. But for her, that was part of who she was. It was part of her identity, right? And so it actually changed the recommendations and the considerations that the doctor shared with her when providing all the treatment options. So things that feel like, how is this ever going to be related to my treatment decision? It provides that context. It provides an understanding of what's important to that person, so that even as the care providers are trying to care for you, they can factor these things in, right? It's not just about heart rate and blood pressure and recovery time. It's about impacting your quality of life the way that you define it. Some people are fine to be lying in bed for 5 weeks. Other people are like, oh my goodness, no way, Jose. Right? But that's based on who they are and how they live their lives.
Karen, like in that, I guess I'll use the example, just continue with that example you just gave, but like, and maybe this is like a little bit outside of your scope and a bit ethereal, but like, somebody entrusts a person because they trust them, obviously, to make decisions for them and to get inside their head because they know them to a certain degree that person feels that they're able to do that. But like using that example of the person who who was attached to the hip of their bike, and they've sort of like explicitly said, you know, if I can't determine for myself and I have to undergo a treatment option that would limit or take away my ability to bike, and there are other options, but they're not as good, or maybe they don't have as high likelihood of being successful. And then kind of like the stickiness of somebody in like a critical situation being able to actually perform that duty, like to actually go, I'm really going to get into their head. Like I could imagine a scenario in which this person is in sort of like a dire situation. The best option to, keep them here on Earth is going to take away their ability to bike. But that person is going, well, I just want them to be here. I know, so you know what? I'm actually going to actually forego the wish that they actually had, because I want them to be here. And if I really stuck to their wishes the way that I think that they would, like, I would run the risk of losing this person. And that's like not acceptable to me as the person making the decision. Like I just like envision, I mean, all of this is very sticky, so like, I guess this is why people sometimes avoid it, because like you got to think about some hard stuff.
But I love that. I love that you brought that up, because that's real life, right? Like it's going to be hard and you're not going to be sure, and you're a human being, right? Like you have a relationship with this person. That's going to get in the way, not in the way, but that's going to make it hard, right? So I think so a couple things on that. One is, yes, it's not always going to work out exactly the way you want it to work out, and you're not always going to have that. But that comes down to that choosing that person or people. So the other element that we would encourage people to do is don't just talk to one person, talk to a whole bunch of people, right? Because then that person isn't there on their own. Sometimes you're going to have one person. Everyone's life is different. Everyone's got different relationships and networks and communities. And in certain communities, the decisions are made by consensus, and that's their cultural belief, and that's how it works. Or they're just, there's a hierarchy, and that person is going to make the decision on behalf of those people. So in that circumstance, I would say, imagine if you hadn't had that conversation, right? So you're still going to make the best decision you can based on what you know, but you haven't had that decision and you don't know, versus you have had that discussion, or a discussion, any discussion where, you watched a movie, something happened, and all of a sudden you go, holy smokes, man, if that ever happened to me, blah, 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 fill in the blank. So often advanced care planning conversations happen informally all of the time. Mm-hmm. But we're not listening, and we're not sharing it with enough people so that when the time comes, people can support each other to make those hard decisions for the other person.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of my mom recently tested me on this, and I didn't realize what she was doing until having this conversation. But my mom reached out to me, and she was like, hey, listen, I'm going to send you an email to a survey. And the survey is a list of questions about medical situations that I could find myself in. And she was like, I want you to think about how I would answer those questions and then answer it that way. And then after you fill that out, I'm going to send you my answers, and we're going to see how well you did on guessing what I would do. And I realized that she was doing advanced care planning.
So she did tell you explicitly what she was doing, and you still didn't understand?
Not so sneaky.
It was, but I didn't realize I was being tested because she didn't follow up with me on it to, like, maybe my answers were so bad.
She just moved on to another person.
My twin brother, yeah.
She came to me,
likely.
actually. She was like, you know what? Screw Brian. I'm going to go to Jer.
She was like, he just really doesn't get it. And so I realized now that I was tested and I didn't make the cut.
Right.
Well, you don't know. Maybe you matched up perfectly, and she's like, we're good.
Did you ever have the follow up? And did she say, in this scenario, like it was actually comedic that you thought that I would want this?
No, she didn't. But I should follow up. And I think this is something that might be true, or I'm feeling about advanced care planning in general, is that to me in my life right now at 34 years old, I understand the importance of it, but it doesn't feel urgent. And I could easily think like, I'll do that next week. and it never, like, it feels important, but it doesn't feel like a priority. And so, Karen, I guess, like, my question for you is, like, how do we make it a priority? How do we make it feel like it should be a priority?
Well, it's interesting. So we do polls every once in a while, and we ask Canadians, what do you think? Do you think it's important? Do you think people should do this? So consistently, 90+% of the people that we poll across the country say yes, planning for your health and personal care is important. About 3/4 of them have thought about it, have given some thought to it. And in terms of like having a documented plan, and I say that loosely because advanced care planning, if you're, it's a process. It's not just like fill this document out, done, right? It's not that kind of thing. But there is kind of a process of going through it and documenting it and then sharing it with people. Or you can do a recording, you can write a letter, you could write a song, right? There's a gazillion ways to share what you want to say with the people that you like or that you trust or that you want to know this. So there's that side of it, right? What we saw though during the pandemic, unfortunately, was those conversations, they went up. They almost doubled from our previous polls.
Oh, interesting.
So, it is hard. It's not urgent. I think there's a couple things we have found that typically when someone's going through a life milestone, let's call it, getting married, moving, having children, someone close to you passes, diagnosis of a new illness, that will definitely add some urgency to it. The other perspective I would give is actually exactly what your mother did, right? Sometimes we're going to be the person. We're going to be the trusted person. I've tried to maybe have some conversations with people who weren't comfortable having those conversations because I was like, well, if you want me to be your person, we have to have this conversation, right? So another side of it is kind of looking at the role reversal. So I think of sandwich generation. You're trying to take care of your kids. You're seeing your parents get older and you're going, oh my goodness, this is a lot for me to think about. So one approach is, I can't think about that right now. I have too much on my plate. Another approach is, oh my God, how much harder is it going to be if I don't just start to have a conversation? If I don't just say, hey, Mom, what does a good day look like for you? Like, if everything's well, what's really like at the end of the day, what's most important to you? Right? It might feel weird at strange, but just have one conversation. You don't have to talk about illness. You don't have to talk about death. You have to talk about what brings you joy. Who are the most important people in your life? What scares the bejeebies out of you? You'll get to know a person from that, and that will give you information. So I think in terms of that urgency, I totally hear what you're saying. There's a reason probably a lot of people in their 30s don't really make a will until they buy their house or they have children.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's the same thing.
It's really interesting from the that perspective, that sandwich perspective, but specifically thinking about your parents, and I think that there's something to, it's probably very, very common and very often that a child is the person that ends up being, the trusted person that's going to be making a decision for their parents, and you grow up. I think you grow up and you get into your adulthood and you have this relationship with your parents, and I think it's really common for people to really think that they know their parents, but like really this version of your parents that's like an amalgamation or like a feeling that's like based on your childhood and maybe your teen years where but in your adulthood, I think that there's a lot of people that don't get to know their parents as individuals. They know them as their parent. They know them as their mother or their father or whatever. And because when I really think about that, I go, yeah, I know my parents so well, but I really don't. And I could make a guess, but I could just as easily be totally in the opposite direction of what they might want in a critical situation where they need care, because what I think that they want is based on might be based on just this version of them or our relationship that's not it's hard to kind of convey. But
do you think that you, like, if you were to do the thing that Brian did with his mom, right, where your mom Uriel goes, hey Taylor, I want you to fill this out and I want to compare what you say versus what I say and see where the differences are. And I also was like, hey, Tay, I too want to do the same thing with you. Do you think you would?
What test would you score better on?
Yeah. Do you think
I'd score better on you because like I know you as you.
Yeah.
Like I know you as you individually as a person. I think I could really easily think of you outside of our relationship because I know you and I know I know a lot of the relationships you hold with other people, and I can consider those relationships that you have with other people as well, and the differences between ours and yours.
Which is funny, right? Because you and I have spent a fair amount of time together over the last, 12, 13 years. But you've spent way more time with your mom and dad than you've spent with me. And it's kind of interesting to think about how the way we relate to our parents.
I mean, especially with your parents,
much fucking time with them.
And you think like you're going, it can be challenging to flip that role of going me caring for you because like your relationship up until that point is probably almost exclusively
them caring for you.
Yeah. And so flipping that and going like, oh, I got to do I'm doing the
now. I got to breastfeed you, Mom. Yeah, fuck. I didn't think about that.
Yeah,
and I also don't think I can.
I mean, I've heard there's ways. I don't know exactly the science behind it. But
well,
on the internet or something.
Sorry to wrap you up in that, Karen. I apologize.
No, but it makes me think there's a campaign. So Advanced Care Planning Australia, like Advanced Care Planning is a global, everyone's doing it. They did a campaign called Love Is Not Enough. And it was one of the most powerful advanced care planning campaigns I think that I've ever seen. And people refer to it all of the time. And it's in part, they sit down, they have people. So some of it is father-daughter, some of it is, husband-wife, some of it is friends, all these different things. And they ask them different questions like, dating game style, right? Like, what's their favorite color? What's this? What's that? What food would they choose? And then they switch to a few more kind of heavy questions or serious questions, health-related questions. And in certain parts, like just the thought of it, you can see the emotion come on the wife's face, right? Yeah. Like what would happen if I don't remember the names, but if Bob was to suddenly be diagnosed with a serious illness and her whole, like she tenses up and oh my God, you could see the emotion take over.
Yeah.
Right. And so you kind of see, oh, well, I don't know. I haven't thought about that. I think this. Versus other scenarios, they're going, actually, you know what? We've talked about this and it's a completely different interaction. You never question the love between all these different kind of people that are being interviewed. Our level of love, our level of caring, our level of, relationship with others, it doesn't diminish that. But you still might not know. So what you're talking about, how we have different relationships with people, we know them differently. They know us differently. It's not a measure of like how much we care. Like, well, if I choose this person, this one's going to think I don't love them as much.
Right.
It's not about that, right? It's also about how is my sister under pressure versus my aunt? How are they going to be in that situation? I have 2 kids. Some are more, one is more emotional than the other. I know this. Anyone who knows them knows this. So sometimes when there's decisions to be made, that's going to come up too. So those dynamics about that person, defaulting to the person that's closest to you or to your eldest child or, just geography wise, they're there, might seem like, oh, well, I'll just do that because it just makes sense. Or, well, of course it's going to be this person. But when you just stop to kind of think about it, how are they in these kind of situations? Do they really know me? So what you talked about with your parents, I think that's a great insight. Because that's the reality, like to kind of pause and go, do I know?
Yeah. Yeah. Like my love for them is not necessarily going to be the best guiding light for what they need.
Could even get in the way at some points.
And not knowing those answers to those questions doesn't mean that you don't love them. It just means that you haven't had those conversations.
I guess, so it's quite clear that advanced care planning is not something that you should only be considering when you feel like you are, nearing the end of your life or after you've received some sort of major diagnosis that's going to shorten the amount of time that you have here. And it's something that you can start thinking about as early as possible. Saying that, there's people out there that are going to hear this and they're going to go, yeah, Totally. I understand. Makes sense. And still do fucking nothing.
Yeah, like Brian.
Yeah. And I don't blame.
I
don't fault them for that. That's just the way that we are. There's things that we know, but we don't really know that we don't know. We feel we know.
And if you're young and you're relatively healthy, it's like it's so easy to just be like, that's a later date thing.
Yeah. So my before we wrap, the one thing that I would love to hear from you is, if you're someone out there who's listening to this and you're hearing this and you're going, okay, I hear this, I understand it's important, I'm fully healthy, I'm 29 years old, I've never thought about this before, what would you say to someone like that? What would you suggest that they start to actively do to take action, or actively think to get the ball rolling, where they can find themselves at a place where they have put something down officially? They have actually taken a step forward to bring these ideas forward to, whether it's someone in their life or even to themselves, to be able to think about this kind of stuff.
So a couple things come to mind. One is they could go to someone they know, anyone they know, and say, I was listening to the Sickboy podcast and they were talking about this thing called advanced care planning and got me thinking, and just have a conversation about advanced care planning with somebody else. You'll be surprised what comes up. So they've learned a little bit about what it is now, what it's not. They might have more questions. So when you hear about it, because that's something we've heard, when they hear something about it, just talk about it. Like, the basic is start conversations, because different things will just emerge. If they're not sure how to start those conversations, go to advancedcareplanning.ca. It's a national website. It's got basic information. It's got conversation starters, and it'll give you ideas. Just Google advanced care planning in your province. There's different tools, there's different resources. The most common ones are conversation starters, because people don't know how to start the conversation. That conversation can be exactly this. I heard this. I'm not sure what to do. I know it's important. What do you think? Have you done it? Right? Just start to inquire with somebody else. And then you could also just journal on your own, or however you process information or think about it, and think about, what is important to me? There's guides. So there's an advanced care planning guide that we have. There's guides in BC, Ontario, Nova Scotia. There's tons of guides out there. So there are free resources available to you that have questions, right? Just to help you through your own reflections. So Advanced Care Planning Canada, we celebrate and recognize Advanced Care Planning Day every April 16th. And on there, we have reflection prompts. So this year's theme is, if not you, who? So think about that. That's it. Sit down and think about, if it's not me, if something happens to me, who do I trust? Why do I trust them? How can I support them? What do I want them to know? How do I want them to be supported? That's the first step. Think about it. And if you want to, take that further and have a conversation with somebody else. But acp.ca, advancedcareplanning.ca, ACP Day, April 16th. There's resources on there right now, and there's reflection prompts.
Yeah.
Go on there. We have a few different questions for you. So there's lots of, I would say, start small. If you're comfortable, have a conversation with somebody else.
Yeah.
If you're not, get yourself a coffee, get yourself a beer, get yourself whatever your beverage of choice is, sit down, think about it.
Yeah. And how fitting that this episode has come out today, the day after Advanced Care Planning Day. So if you missed it yesterday and you didn't know, well, now you know. It happened yesterday, and you can do something about it now.
And for you, it's today. We just, all Sickboy listeners, they actually made the day today.
That's right. Yeah,
ACP Day is today.
I mean, today for us, it's the middle of March. But when you're listening to this, it was yesterday. So whatever.
And for you, it's today.
For you, it's fucking now.
Yeah, do it now.
So and that's it. Do it now. And I do love your point about the icebreaker. It is a really great icebreaker. I was actually having a conversation the other day on another podcast about having challenging conversations with your partner about sex. If you have a hard time talking about sex with your partner, or there's something that you want to broach, but it's sex is another one of those things, like illness, like death, that it can be really sticky, and I shouldn't have used that term. It's a really touchy subject for some couples to talk about sex. And one of the great ways to broach that subject with your partner is to use the "I read somewhere that" kind of starter. Or in this case, "I heard on this podcast this thing." And it's just an easy way to bring something up that might be a sensitive topic, but really you're bringing it up to stimulate a conversation that doesn't feel scary, that just is, stating that you've heard something and it made you think, and it opens the door to have a really safe, low stakes conversation about something that otherwise might sound scary coming out of fucking nowhere, right?
If I'm honest, I didn't hear anything you just said because I just heard sensitive, sticky, touchy, stimulating.
Well,
but I'm sure what
it was a myriad of poor word choices.
I do love words.
It was. There's a lot of double entendres.
Karen, thank you. Firstly, thank you so much for the work that you do. We are huge fans of the CHPCA, and we're so grateful that we've had an opportunity to be awarded.
Oh, sorry.
Right. We're honored about the award, but we're not here about that.
Right.
We're really glad that we've had an opportunity to have someone from the organization come in and talk about a subject that we haven't had an opportunity to really sink our teeth into. And again, you've made it quite evident that this is an important thing that you should not be waiting to think about. It's very obvious. COVID played a role in shifting the way that people think about these types of things. And so let's not wait for the next global pandemic to start to think about our mortality and the things that are important to us while we're alive here today. And so with this conversation, thank you for reminding all of our listeners and the three of us that advanced care planning is something you can think about and take action on right now, and it doesn't have to be uncomfortable. This has been a real delight. So thank you so much for taking your time to chat with us.
Thank you. This has been great. And, visit us, learn. I'll be in Halifax. I might stop by.
Hey, absolutely. Doors are wide open. All right. Well, that was wonderful. And I hope that that instills some confidence and action in folks to, in the very least, think about their advanced directive. I say that now, but I guarantee you in like 3 years, I'm going to be like, fuck, I never did it.
And hopefully, really change people's tunes on Karen's.
Well, yeah. My tune was changed.
Right.
Moving on. So we talked about dying and death in that podcast. Today, for the wrap up, I want to talk about de-aging.
De-aging?
Yeah.
Like raging, like Benjamin Button.
No, like getting a blood boy and
yes,
and
but de-aging. You know what? Far less creepy.
Okay.
Far more interesting and cool. So there was a man last year, Dr. Joseph Dituri. He spent a record 100 days underwater, and he claims that the experience de-aged him, and he even shares some proof. So in 2023, Dr. Joseph Dituri challenged himself to spend 100 days in a habitat located 30 feet under a Florida lagoon.
Oh, this is like the guys who build a little, like a little home, and you're not actually in the water. Yeah. You're just under water.
So he's under some type of different pressurized circumstances.
There's a container, and you're living in the container underwater.
I don't know. Maybe there is water in there. He looked pretty yeah. Well, so I'll show you a photo of Dr. Dituri. This is him emerging from the water 100 days after he went in last year in 2023. And you can see here that I don't know if he looked like that before he went down.
You know what you should have had for this image?
Those gills grew on him while he was down.
You know what you should have had for this image? You should have had old Greg.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, this actually is him after he came out. So you can see there the water took a fucking toll on his skin. For the people just listening, the first image I showed was the monster from the Sound of Water, the Shape of Water. This is an actual image of him. Just kidding. This is a generated image of a man. And I said less boils, but it just kept giving me these boils. But I guess if you were underwater for 100 days, maybe you would have these boils. I don't know. Or are they barnacles? I can't tell.
It might be barnacles.
Oh, that should
this
be a new
actually
segment.
is
boils,
him here.
Boils or barnacles?
So that's him in his habitat. And you can see he's not underwater, but his hair looks wet. I think that's just a product. The really funny thing here in those bags, so the name of this image, like the file name online was Dr. Joseph with food. Yeah. Those are bags of piss.
Okay.
So I don't know. Maybe the de-aging thing was him drinking his piss down there. I don't know. Like that was food, but he's got blood and pee in those files. So.
Okay.
He looks like.
Do we have any other information about this guy? What was he trying to accomplish? What was he doing?
Yeah, so he didn't go down there for fun. Dr. Dituri, he went down. As he was down, he was monitored how his body would react to long-term extreme pressure. And while he was down there, this is actually fucking really cool. He even discovered a brand new species while he was down there.
Oh, that's cool.
Don't know what the species is. They never said. During this time, the scientist and former naval officer, so this guy knows water. He stayed in a small 9x9 meter room that he had to scuba dive to get to.
This guy knows
This is water boy. This is water boy. Dr. Dituri's goal was to research a type of medicine that can help deliver oxygen to the human body under high pressures by helping it to grow new blood vessels.
He looks pretty jacked.
Yeah, he's a pretty fit dude. I mean, he was a naval officer. He was part of the scuba squad. Everybody knows, to be a part of the scuba squad, you got to go to bed. You got to get in the bath before you go to bed, and you got to be smart.
And after the bath, you have to try and study hard, because if you want to be a member of the scuba squad, you have to be smart.
Yeah, it's true. So,
Scuba Steve, guys, I used to catfish people on Plenty of Fish, and my username was Scuba Steve Get Wet.
There's a lot of Adam
Christ.
Sandler references flying around here.
So when the scientist was not recording his body's reaction to the extreme pressure of living underwater, he was teaching school kids through video link on his laptop.
So he's like kind of like the reverse Chris Hadfield.
Yeah. Well, actually, yeah. And you know what? Chris actually did that. There's a couple of Canadian astronauts.
That's what I mean.
The CSA. No. What I mean is.
Oh, underwater.
Yeah, they did an entire. They did an entire mission just like this, an underwater mission. I think they were down there for 3 months, whereas this guy was
down there for
a couple
3 months.
like a week later.
Did they
a week longer.
Apparently
it was a record, so it was
did
longer.
Did it say
than
how deep he was?
Yes, he was under. He was 30 feet underwater.
Okay,
in a lagoon, which
hence the green water in the window of his because everybody knows lagoons are green.
30 feet. That's not super deep.
No, but it's deep enough. I mean, it's deep enough for high pressure.
That's the amount. So if you were to be traveling,
see how much,
and you were like, I want to go scuba diving, but I don't want to get my license. I don't want to get my certification. The furthest you can go down is 30 or 40 feet. Without getting a license.
The pressure
and it's like you need to go down even at that level. You're going down gradually in stages.
Oh, you can get the bends from
getting
just even there.
Like the pressure of 30 feet of water is 42.7 psi, and the height of a water column is 98.4 feet.
I mean, it takes like to come up.
It's pretty.
It's quicker to go down because you really just have to pop your ears as you go down. But it takes, it probably takes like 10 minutes to come up from 40 feet up to the surface.
2 atmospheres.
You have to stop and you have to basically acclimatize like every few feet.
It's 2 atmospheres of environmental pressure. So surface level, we have 1 atmosphere. He doubled it. At 30 feet, it's 2. At 100 feet, it's 4 atmospheres.
Crazy.
Think about it.
Man,
I'm thinking because I don't really.
When you scuba dive, it's like, I mean, first of all, it's possibly the coolest thing I've ever done. But the pressure is nuts.
I wonder if I could do it now that I have.
Well, you don't cough anymore. That was the worry, right? That you.
No, it wasn't coughing. It was like just being able to like get enough oxygen, being able to breathe clearly.
I mean, I feel like that's kind of the point of going down gradually. Is like, your body just acclimates. Like every few feet, you stop. And you chill, you let your ears pop.
Maybe I made that up.
You take a few breaths.
Do you feel it like on your arms and legs and stuff? Like the pressure?
You just feel it in your ears.
So while he was down there, he was closely monitored by other medical, psychological, and psychosocial experts. A press release from last year added, quote, part of the work will see a psychologist and a psychiatrist monitor the effects he experiences while in an environment similar to extended space travel. It's an isolating, confined, extreme environment. And as humans, we really need to figure out how we're going to be living in that environment if we're going to expand our planet, if going to go interplanetary, if we're going to find all the cures that we need to find. That's a crazy fucking sentence that they must have just been
honestly, guys.
On that one. That's a badly.
This is really
that wasn't the scientists and just some kid in his class that he was teaching via Zoom.
Right.
This is really cool, but honestly,
and it's an isolating, confined, extreme environment. And as humans, we really need to figure out how we're going to be living in that environment if we're going to expand our planet, if we're going to go into planetary, if we're going to find all the cures that we need to.
You should see Jeremy out in public. He makes fun of everybody with speech impediments.
No, that was my impression of a child
with a speech impediment.
Anyway,
isn't that a Fortnite thing?
The point that
Fortnite, V-Bucks.
The point that I was trying to make is that this is interesting but not impressive, for the reason that if you watch,
here we go. Brown's going to tell us how he's going to trial for the Olympics for curling.
Well, no, I mean that's not even that impressive because it's not that hard. But if you ever watch a Mr. Beast video, then like, being in an underwater environment where you have like a house like that for 100 days, really not that impressive. Mr. Beast might make that video because the title is like kind of clickbaity, but really like Mr. Beast survived underground. He was buried alive.
He would have done it where he was like, all right, 100 days and your entire diet has to be prime.
Yeah.
Doesn't Mr. Beast just torture people and then give them money for it?
He kind of does it to himself, to be honest. Like he buried himself alive for 7 days, which was like wild.
Who gives a shit, dude? Fucking what's his name? Magic card guy. He fucking buried himself alive for 6 years while frozen in a block of ice.
Would you rather be
a tarantula
buried
in his mouth? And it survived.
And a knife.
Would you rather be buried alive for 7 days, or would you rather be in this underwater habitat for 100 days?
Oh, 100
easy
days.
100 days.
Yeah, 100 days
right.
in the habitat for sure.
That's my point. So like, it's interesting that this guy did this, but in the Mr. Beast world, like it's not really that.
So
impressive.
You're just not impressed by comparison.
Exactly.
Well, here's the impressive. Here's the impressive part, Brian.
I mean, that's fair, right?
Here's the impressive part. When he emerged from his underwater mission last June,
his Lamborghini was struck by a train,
which was pushed into a 70-foot pit,
and he had to save that and if he did, he won $500,000.
When he emerged last June, Dr. Dituri claimed that his blood test showed a 50% reduction in every inflammatory marker in his body. He claimed a lot of the areas of his health improved following the 100-day mission, including longer telomeres, structures on chromosomes that are often linked to extending life. He claims he's de-aged 20 years. So he was speaking to reporters at WKMG News in Orlando.
And he doesn't look that old.
On the Spike, early morning radio. And Dr. Dituri said, I'm now 56. My extrinsic...
That guy's 56?
Yep.
He looks 36.
Well, his extrinsic, aka biological age, is 44. I mean, he looks 44.
Yeah, I suppose he doesn't look 56 though.
His biological age was 44, but when he got out of the water, his extrinsic age was 34. He said, "So my telomeres lengthened. I actually got younger when I was under the water."
Do you guys know how old I am?
Do you know your extrinsic age?
26.
How do you know? How did you get that tested? It's just a gut feeling.
No, I'm sure it's a wildly inaccurate, kind of bogus measure.
You filled out a survey
bogus
online?
measure on my
half your age plus
on my
6 or
Garmin
something.
watch.
Yeah.
But it takes it as it takes into account like athletic performance, BMI, VO2 max, heart rate stuff.
Well, he believes he also believes that part of this age reversal has to do with the fact that he was living in a hyperbaric high pressurized environment.
And then that must be
makes sense.
Must be like short lived, that the effect of that.
Oh, there's a big rebound. So his age, his extrinsic age right now is 99.
Right.
Yeah. He bounced back.
But I imagine it's kind of like training at altitude, right?
Totally.
Like for a certain amount of time afterwards, you're like, you perform.
Yeah, you probably have to go down there. Yeah.
Which is why, like, again, to my point, this is really not like a Mr. Beast video, because like, it's not very clickbaity to be like, I spent 100 days underwater and got 20 years younger.
I think
like,
you just axe the 20 years younger, and
I know, right?
You just say you spent 100 days underwater.
I know, but it's like, my point is that, when you have the details, it's not that impressive.
You hate the guy, Brian.
Yeah. Or I just really like Mr. Beast.
Right. And you can't have both.
Exactly.
One or the other.
So that's it. At Dr. Deep Sea on Instagram, go fuck yourself. Nothing impressive about you or any of your accomplishments in life. Coming from three guys sitting on comfortable chairs that swivel. Folks, thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed that. And again, do your part. Go search up advanced directives and pay for Brian's app and answer the questions. But for real, thank you so much for listening, and we hope you enjoyed that. And we'll be back next week with another fascinating episode. In the meantime, if you want to support the podcast, head on over to YouTube. Make sure you follow along, and you can watch the episodes. You can see all the different variations of Dr. Deep Sea there that I showed. And if you want to support further, you can leave a rating or review on Apple Podcasts, or leave a rating on Spotify, or if there's a question there about the episode, you can interact with that. And of course, all of our episodes in the show notes, you can find the link to our Discord channel, where we would love to have you join our little community.
Do a will and an advanced directive.
Yeah.
Get it done. Especially if you're married or have kids.
Yeah,
for sure, do that. And if you want to be a guest on the show, go to sickboypodcast.com and fill out the guest form.
And thanks, as always, to the wonderful women who help make this show possible, our moms. Huge thank you to Maxine, to Uriel, and to Marie. We love you all.
Mm-hmm. Extra thank you to Uriel. That is it for this week.
I'm Brian.
I'm Taylor.
And I'm Jeremy, and this is Sickboy.